Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to be talking about the Hi Point model JPC in 40 Smith & Wesson. Now, a couple decades ago, some guys decided to make the cheapest possible semi-automatic handgun that would actually work. And I remember these guns. I don't remember what they're called, but I remember they were $99 brand new in 45 ACP or 9mm. And like their descendant, the Hi Point, they're a straight blowback. Evolution occurred as it does, and the Hi Point series of pistols was the result. And in most ways, they are awful. But we'll talk about that. This one in 40 Smith & Wesson is the same frame that was used for 45 ACP, and I have actually heard of people converting these to fire 10mm, which seems slightly insane to me. These guns are built to a price point, and that price point is low. Yes, the MSRP is about $200, but nobody sells these for MSRP. I paid $75 for this one, apparently new in box. It's a bit of a story there. Linda and I were checking out a gun store in Tacoma that we'd never been to before, and I saw this gun, and I knew what it was, but I'd never actually handled one and looked at it, and so I did. And just out of idle curiosity, I said, well, what's the price? And the guy looked at the tag and said $75. With the gun in hand, looking it over carefully, I dithered over whether to spend $75 on it, until my wife finally said, oh, for God's sake, Mike, it's a service caliber handgun with a lifetime warranty for $75. Just buy it. And I did. And I took it to the range and test fired it, and it worked. It even shot pretty good groups, and despite being a straight blowback in 40 Smith & Wesson, it was actually fairly pleasant to shoot from the recoil perspective, at least. The trigger's bad. There's no other word for it. It's bad. But honestly, I've got worse triggers on more expensive guns. Anyway, let's take a look at what makes this thing tick. Okay, first things first, unload and show clear. Magazine release is in the conventional place, and it releases the magazine, which drops clear. Pull back the slide after you take the safety off, and chamber's empty. We're good. One thing that'll strike you right away about this gun is that it's big. With the stock extended magazine that holds 10 rounds, it is almost 6 inches high and a hair over 8 inches long. But it's not just big in size. This thing is heavy. This gun, with the magazine, unloaded, weighs a hair under 45 ounces. It is an absolute brick. And almost as well made. So, these guns do have a magazine safety, so you cannot fire the gun with the magazine removed. And that does not help the trigger pull. Trigger pull is... okay. The trigger pull may be heavy, but at least it's also kind of crunchy. As I said, it is not at all a good trigger. The slide, which is most of the way to the gun, is enormous. This is not the bottom of the slide. This is. And yeah, it's a great big chunk of metal. It's very, very wide, as you can see. Let's see, what is that? That's almost 1.5 inches wide across the top. The gun does come standards with this yellow front sight and red outlined rear sights, which are, believe it or not, adjustable. I have not needed to adjust them because basically the gun shoots to point of aim. And I have done some stippling on the gun because the original grips have, and they are separate grips from the polymer frame, they have an almost greasy feel to them. And so I took a 1.5 millimeter carbide ball and a Dremel tool and stippled the hell out of it one afternoon when I was unusually bored. Now, as far as what the gun is made of, the frame is polymer with a steel insert as required. It does have a sort of mini rail here, which I suppose you could attach some sort of attachment to. Although honestly, practically anything you would put on that rail will cost more than the gun. The slide is Zamac. It is cast aluminum zinc alloy. And again, this is why it is massive. Now, the slide locks open on an empty magazine. But there is no external magazine release. And the safety can be used as a slide stop to hold the slide open when you're disassembling the gun. Which you do, you can see this notch in the slide, you do by punching out this roll pin, and then you lift it up and off the top. And when you do, this piece, which is a separate piece that sits inside a hole in the frame, which connects to this pin to hold it in place, when you do lift it up and remove it, the striker spring, if you're not careful, will shoot this part to some random location where you may never see it again. I'm not going to take this apart. It's really not made to be taken apart. Although, as I said, as I just indicated, you can. But really, I think you're really supposed to lock the slide back and just hose it out, clean the barrel out, things like that. It's not made to be easy to take apart. It isn't. And yeah, it's built to a price. They did this in the cheapest fashion possible. Let me show you some of what that means. Grips are held by a single screw, which is actually a self-tapping screw that cuts its own threads into the polymer frame. The grips are retained at the bottom by tabs that stick into this portion of the frame. So you have to pry it up, you have to set the safety, and you have to pull it forward to get it out. This is actually a separate piece of, no, it isn't. It is part of the frame. I sit corrected. Grips are hollow, and this is the slide hold open that locks the slide back when you've got an empty magazine in it. And I can't really do that right now. Let's put the magazine in. So it just pops up. And you can see the rather unusual arrangement of the spring here. It's simply a tension spring. And the safety is simply a stamped piece of metal, which comes right out if you've got the slide off and you take the grip off. The trigger bar is similar on this side. So again, it's not really a gun you want to take apart. And that safety has nothing to hold it in the up or down position, so it just kind of does what it wants when you're trying to do other things. Let's get the grip back on, put in the self-tapping screw. See, this is a place they saved money. It would have taken a human a couple minutes to tap a screw hole here. This way they don't need to. They just run a screw in and it cuts its own threads. And it's actually kind of clever. There is a guide rod in here But the guide rod is based at the front and travels back and forth with the slide rather than being set up from the other end. And that was so they didn't have to do anything special to make for the slide to interface with the recoil spring, because otherwise they'd have had to have a hollow place for the spring to go to keep it from slipping aside and jamming. Instead, they just put the recoil guide rod in backwards, and it works. So this is not by any means an impressive gun from any conventional standpoint. But I got to admit, I'm kind of impressed with the engineering and the decisions they made to make their goal. You know, they didn't do things just because they were cheap. They did them because they were cheap, they were smart, and they worked. For all of their heaviness, clunkiness, low capacity, by the way, this is an incredibly cheesy magazine, but it does work just like the rest of the gun. And for all of its foibles and faults, you have to say they accomplished the goal. The Hi Point series of pistols have a lot of downsides. They're big, they're heavy, and while this is a subjective one, they're ugly. On the other hand, if you shot yourself dry and still need to beat a whale to death, this is your gun. But in all seriousness, it was a gun made to be a gun so that everyone could afford a service caliber handgun. And they do work. This one has been 100% reliable with ball ammunition. That's not nothing. It's very, very finicky about hollow points, as you saw in the shooting video. It's very finicky about hollow points. It does not like hollow points with wide mouths, but there are hollow points it does just fine with, and it particularly does well with the oh god, I can't remember what they're called, critical defense ammunition, where the hollow point is actually closed with a polymer plug. So they can be reliable if you find the ammo they like, and they work. And people have done destruction tests of these guns, and it is astonishing the lengths they had to go to break the guns. They're solid. With the right ammo, they're reliable, or at least will be until one of their cheap parts breaks, which honestly doesn't happen that often. And what I hear a lot is, well, you should just save up another $100 or $200 and get a better gun. And in a perfect world, sure, why not? But for much of my life, another $100 or $200 was unmanageable. For an awful lot of people in this country, $200 is the difference between feeding their kids dried ramen noodles or actually getting them decent meals. And we don't all have the same priorities, but between feeding my children decently and getting a better gun, I know which one I would have chosen. Your mileage may vary. So, the Hi Point, for all its flaws and foibles, and they are many, is a roaring success. They sell a crap ton of these things and have for many years. I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that they're going to stop selling a crap ton of them, because they're cheap. Why not? And more importantly, when you get a decent one and find the right ammo, it's going to work and work and work and work. Could you put 5,000 rounds through it without it breaking? Probably not, but that's not why people buy a Hi Point. They buy a Hi Point because with their own finances and their priorities, they just can't do better. Or, like me, they saw one and it was so cheap, they went, why not? And I have to admit, I was curious, and that was a large part of looking at it and then buying it. And my curiosity is sated. This gun lives in the safe. It's actually one of my few safe queens. And it's not because it's valuable, certainly. It's because I can't get rid of it. Nobody wants it. Local gun stores, they won't take it. They won't take it on trade. Because it's a Hi Point, and they're cheap, and they're kind of crap. But again, they're kind of crap, but they're kind of crap that can actually work. So, make your own decisions. But certainly, if you can afford it, any way possible, reasonable, get something else. If you just want a plinker and it's something to goof off with and it's dirt cheap, why not? Odds are good it'll probably work, and it's got a lifetime warranty. And I'm told Hi Point's customer service is excellent. I also like their attitude, I have to admit. It's like, yeah, we know what we make. We make no bones about it. It's a cheap gun, and that's fine. I am waiting with bated breath for them to actually bring up their outdated design with the higher capacity magazine and some other more modern features. The Yeet cannon. And just the fact that they agreed to name it that gives them serious points in my book. Anyway, the Hi Point. It is what it is. If you like the video, please hit like and subscribe. It's very easy for you, but it's a very, very big help to the channel. It's the only way YouTube's mysterious algorithms notice me and spread my stuff around. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, there's a link below in the description. As always, every bit really helps. And that's it for this time. So stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.